Swinson.
Thank you very much, Mr Williams, and I would like to start by congratulating the Honourable Member for the Wrekin on securing this debate, which, as he rightly points out, is incredibly timely in this period of Advent in the run-up to Christmas, which, as I think he articulated very well, is of course a Christian festival, but as we each embark on our Christmas shopping and the hectic run-up to preparations for inviting family round, it is all too easy to forget sometimes the real meaning of Christmas and why we're celebrating at this time of the year. And I know from my own constituency post bag, there is a genuine feeling among some Christians that they are being overlooked and even sometimes discriminated against on the basis of their faith. Clearly, the examples given, which I'm sure we have all heard about from time to time, of government agencies, local government organisations feeling oversensitive about Christmas and then leading to the ridiculous actions of banning it or refusing to use the words, is obviously silly. Just as it is right for other festivals to be celebrated, and indeed in many of our schools, which are now multi-faith, the children from the different religions will each at a particular time of year, whether it's at Eid or Ramadan or Hanukkah or at Christmas, will actually share with the other members of the class what their particular religion celebrates at that time of year. And in fact, that facilitates a better understanding for all the young people. And I very much hope, in fact, that since the quality of religious education is hopefully improving within the country, that in future generations that will actually lead to a much greater tolerance, understanding and harmony between the different religions in the country. So clearly any institutions that are taking that oversensitive approach to Christmas are not acting in a right-minded way, and as the Honourable Member pointed out, I too have never met any member of another faith, or indeed any fairly right-thinking person who does not have faith, who has any objection whatsoever to celebrating these religious festivals. Like many members at the moment, I've just got my Christmas cards sent off to the local printers, and we'll soon start the mammoth task of signing them all. And this year, the front of my card has a nativity scene drawn in felt pen and then scanned and printed. Last year I had a penguin juggling snowballs, and the year before I had a reindeer. And the designs on the front of my card are chosen and designed by local school children in my constituency. So obviously there is a variety of things that people associate with Christmas, and it's nice, I think, and fitting that every so often, in fact, the winning design is one that does hark back to the traditional meaning of Christmas.
Mike Richard.
Is she aware that the post office at the moment have two religious stamps? One is of a very nice angel, whether an archangel I'm unsure, and one is of Madonna and Child. However, the latter, apparently, and I had an email on this yesterday, I've checked it out in the parliamentary post office, but if I'm wrong, I'll put up both hands. But apparently, the Madonna and Child stamp is only available by request. Now, I'm not suggesting that post office are Christianophobic, but one has to question, why is Madonna and Child only available on request, whilst lots of other stamps are available just walking into the post office?
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention. I confess, having not even signed my cards yet, I'm not quite at the stage of going to buy the stamps. But certainly it does seem strange, unless I know when they bring out Christmas stamps, sometimes there's one which, there's a set of four, and the ones at the top end are for strange amounts for sending to all countries around the world. So I don't know whether that's the reason, but perhaps other members will know the background to that, or indeed the post office might think again and make such stamps available, at least here in the House of Commons, if not more widely elsewhere. I'm sure the Honourable Member will be able to advertise the fact that this is available, so that it will be more requested. So clearly, different people associate different things with Christmas, and it is right that as well as the Santas and the snowmen, we also have the traditional meanings of Christmas represented. We obviously have been living in a time over the past decade or so of increasing religious tension, and this is not just related to Christianity, and this is not just related to the United Kingdom, but across the world. We have had obviously the great controversy in 2005 with the cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. We've just been all following, I'm sure, avidly the news story of Gillian Gibbons and the price she was paid for, or price she had to pay for for allowing her school children to name a teddy bear. And this does raise concerns and raise tensions across the country. I think it's very important in this time that we do act with responsibility, that we do act with respect to all faiths, because surely that has to be the way forward. I think it's also important that we preserve that freedom of speech. And indeed, shortly after the cartoons of Muhammad were presented, I actually took part in a debate at the Oxford Union on the issue of freedom of speech and how much it should be moderated by respect for religion. So.
Very generous, but she's touching on various issues that are in my secondary notes, as it were. In relation to the Prophet Muhammad, I hope she'll agree with me that public money should not be used to blaspheme the Prophet Muhammad. And if she does agree with me, does she share my concern that public money, taxpayers' money, from Shropshire, from all over the country, from her constituency, was given to the Arts Council, which gave £5,000 to prop up falling ticket sales in Newcastle when Jerry Springer, the opera, was showed? Public money being used to blaspheme basically. Thank you.
Intervention should be brief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. I believe I get the point that the honourable member is making. I think we do have to be careful in preserving freedom of speech. I think that is very important, and I'm not somebody who would take the view that it's for us politicians to decide on artistic merit and censoring overly. At the end of the day, I think the arts do push boundaries. They do things which make us think. Sometimes those are things which are insulting, which are offensive. And while that is not good in itself, if an artist or a writer is forever working within the bounds of never offending anybody, then in fact that can actually be very stifling to that creativity. So I do think we need to be quite careful on this issue. We're in a free country, and obviously anybody that doesn't like that kind of production is not compelled to go and see it, nor should they be.
And I appreciate the point which was being made, but I think that the difference with the Arts Council money which went to the Jerry Springer show was not so much that this was a case of censoring or stopping censorship, but actually promoting something which many people in this country found to be offensive. And that's the difference. It's one thing to say we don't want to censor, it's another thing to say we want to promote and use public money for it.
Well, it is obviously up to the bodies that make those decisions to come to their conclusions. They will be looking at different bids, and having not been party to the specific bid that was put forward, I can't comment with too much detail and information on that specific case. But what I wouldn't say is that even when public money is being spent, that the fact that it may offend a particular group of people is a reason to say, well, we absolutely cannot do this, because there are always sensitivities that are not necessarily always predictable. And I would just turn to the question that we've just been seeing on the news in the past few weeks of Gillian Gibbons naming a teddy bear Muhammad, which obviously is seen by many people, particularly in Sudan, as very offensive, so deeply offensive that they felt the need to take to the streets to demand the execution of this teacher from Britain who had gone out there to do a job and try to contribute to the country, and clearly fallen foul of the sensitivities there. I think that just actually demonstrates the fact that you cannot always be certain not to be offending anybody, because in the context of our culture here, naming a teddy bear would not be something which would be easily seen to be something which would cause offence. Therefore, I think public bodies. Well, I mean, my view, for example, on the cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad was that it was a positive thing that our British newspapers did not print them. But I absolutely would defend their right to have the opportunity to do so, had they chosen to. I like the fact they showed their judgment not to on that particular occasion, but I do believe that it's not for us politicians to make all of those calls, that we are living in a free society, and to preserve freedom of speech, we must allow those organisations, whether they're private and sometimes even whether they're are public bodies which are funding different arts to make those decisions based on the merit of the art which they are seeking to promote. There was similar tensions, obviously, with the play Beshti, where there were many protests, and which obviously had been written by a young writer and raised important issues. I think as politicians, the closer we get into censoring and judging what the art should be in this country, I suspect the artistic complement of what is produced in Britain will not necessarily improve. So on that theme of freedom of speech, we obviously had the racial and religious hatred bill went through, which included proposals to make threatening or insulting religion a crime. And I'm very pleased that, along with others in the House, my party opposed that, and indeed it was reduced to only threatening behaviour or language. And I think that's right, because it's not for the state to determine people's beliefs, and it's not for the state to intervene in that way. And indeed, that very legislation which was purported to protect freedom of religion, in fact, was very much opposed by many Christians and people of other faiths who had the very well-grounded fear that, in fact, it could impact on their ability to say what they wanted to say in praise of their religion, to interfere with what was said within the churches or indeed other holy places. And so it's important that when we introduce legislation and we introduce measures to protect one group of people, that we do not inadvertently actually destroy the freedom of speech of another group. Obviously, where it goes beyond beliefs, when actions are discriminatory on the basis of sex or race or so on, then the state has a responsibility to act to protect its citizens. But I do think we have to take care not to enter a kind of big brother world of thought crime, where what's in somebody's mind somehow can lead to them being guilty of some offence. The Honourable Member was very right to point out the great benefits of Christianity to this country over the years. It's all very well for us to hear about the negative sides of religion, as we often do, particularly with relation to conflict around the world. But as he pointed out, many of the great artists, musicians and architects of our past were inspired by that very Christian faith, and we are all living with the benefits of that today. And indeed, continually, Christians make great contribution to our communities, both locally, nationally, and indeed internationally, if you look at some of the work done, for example, by Christian Aid. Nearer to home for me, there was a recent study done in Glasgow which showed that there was a great hidden contribution made by church groups, with over 2,000 projects funded by the church working in and around Glasgow in some of our most deprived communities to improve the life chances of individuals there. And in my own constituency, in fact, there's a group of young people keen to set up a youth cafe in Bishopbriggs. And in fact, the place where they're currently meeting to do all their planning, the support that they're getting from the youth worker is all actually coming through one of the churches in the area. So there's a great deal that is actually contributed by the church within this country. And in fact, in terms of campaigning and moving things forward, well, you just need to look at campaigns like Make Poverty History or the Move for Greater Fair Trade products to see the impact that the church has managed to have on getting these issues to the top of the political agenda, and also to create a critical mass of people campaigning and actioning about the same issue, to actually make companies change their minds on certain issues, to put pressure, for example, on big supermarkets to stock more fair trade products. And perhaps the Honourable Member, with his understandable points about the difficulty for getting Jesus's and Christian-related Christmas cards and gifts and advent calendars and so on, that may be the next campaign that some members of the church might want to work on, because with that network across the country, it can indeed be a very powerful lobbying group, and we all know that the companies are most likely to listen to the numbers of what they will sell. So there have been great benefits of Christianity to this country. And that's why it is very regrettable when we do see some anti-Christian sentiment. I don't think it's entirely pervasive and as widespread, perhaps, as the Honourable Member suggests, but I think there are certainly examples where it does happen. We just need to look at the case around about this time last year, in fact, with British Airways employee Nadia Aweda, who was told she was unable to wear her cross around her neck as a simple demonstration of her faith. I'm sure many members here actually signed their LED motions and protested against that. ridiculous decision in my mind. And I think, again, that is an example where there is far too much put on the sensitivities, which actually probably won't exist, because I can't imagine people who would actually be offended by such a demonstration of somebody's faith. Indeed, he mentions fewer nativity plays taking place. I think this is a great shame. I fondly remember taking part in various nativity plays, and I'm sure as members we all get the opportunity to go and see a few. In fact, next Friday I'm delighted to be going to Oxgam Primary in Kirkintilloch to watch the children in their nativity play, and it's one of the lovely traditions that we have in our education system. And alongside education about other faiths and religions, it's entirely appropriate that should happen, and schools should not feel the need to defer from such fabulous celebrations. And I haven't met people who have been in any way offended by the putting on of nativity plays. In conclusion, Mr. Williams, I think it is incumbent on all of us to make sure that we treat people from all faiths and of none fairly. And that is all I believe Christians are asking for. It should not seem too much to ask. We do recognise that Christianity is an important religion within this country with a great tradition. It's now existing, obviously, in a very different 21st century Britain, where there are increasingly more and more faiths as the makeup of Britain changes. Increasingly also many people who are perhaps choosing not to subscribe to any one faith, but to pursue their beliefs and way of living in a different manner. And as individuals, it's incumbent on all of us to get along together and to respect each other's beliefs, whatever they are, whether they're a particular religion or whether they're not of a particular religion. And I think that some of the best examples of that happening are, in fact, in our schools today, where very often young children don't have these prejudices and thoughts of discrimination in their mind. It's very often that they learn it from adults around them. So the more integration and understanding that we promote at that age, I think, will certainly help us to deal with some of the problems that have been raised by the Honourable Member today. I think, in addition, when drafting legislation and looking at the equality agenda, we do need to bear in mind the importance of people's freedom of belief. Often this will mean a balancing, because there are obviously sometimes conflicts between different beliefs. But in a liberal society, that's what we must aim to try to work through. So I do thank the Honourable Member for introducing this debate and congratulate him on its timeliness.
Order. I should explain that.